Yo, welcome to Collective University Week 2. Week 2, I'm glad you're here. You stuck around if you came last week, and we're glad you didn't leave us. We're so glad that you're here. We're so glad that you joined us on a Friday. I know some people are in Poland. I don't even know what time it is in Poland. I don't know what time it is in Serbia, so I'm so glad that you're here. We're just honored that you would spend your Friday with us, or Saturday or Thursday. I don't know where Poland is at, but we're just super excited that you're here with us and that you wanted to spend time with us. You know, as Collective is a platform that's just giving creators resources. We're trying to, if you can mute your mic, go ahead and mute your mic when you come in. That'd be great. Amazing. Just so we can get Emma in here. But if you don't know about Collective, if this is your first time in here, or you just kind of stumbled in this Zoom chat, in this Zoom room, Collective is a platform for creators. We're currently in beta right now, and we have a couple of amazing features. Today, we just launched a feature, pretty much a content feed. So we started with the ability to create your portfolio, and we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. But basically, you can upload all your content, any kind of art that you've made, video, photo, writing, whatever, to your platform, to your portfolio. You can share that in a link, share it to clients, share it to pretty much anyone that you're trying to work with. It basically encompasses everything. Today, we're super excited because we launched an amazing feature. It's called the content feed. Basically, you could see what every creator uploads. So it's pretty much like the Facebook, terrible example, Facebook's so old, but basically the content feed. You can see what everybody's doing, what everybody's posting, what everybody's working on. You can see everybody's post. I'm a millennial, I'm 28 years old, so Facebook is my analogy, so whatever. But we're super excited that you're here. We got a lot of things in store today. We got an amazing guest instructor today. Her name is Emma Rubinson. We're super excited to hear what she has to say. I'm going to intro her. I believe she's in the chat right now. Emma, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Yo, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I'm gonna let you take over. I'm gonna mute myself. Man, we're so excited for you to be here and for you to give us what you have to teach us today.
Amazing. Hello, everyone. This is so exciting. Thank you all for coming. If you guys want to turn on your videos, I would love to see your faces. Totally no pressure, but it's always nice to just have face-to-face interaction. I'm gonna go and share my screen. There we go. Welcome to Collective University. I'm teaching today's workshop on building a creator portfolio. My background is in fashion design. I'm currently at Washington University in St. Louis, finishing my final year. I've been working on my Capstone Collection, and I'm going to just kind of take you through my design process and share some tips on building your portfolio. How do I switch this? Cool. So a lot of my work has to do with dreams and understanding human consciousness and connections between people. And I'm just gonna kind of walk you through my process of designing and how I would put together a really high quality portfolio by showing some examples of stuff that I've done. So I'll cover how I got started in fashion, some of my major projects, my personal approach to designing, and then kind of walk you through my process of designing a collection from a mood board, sketching in both 2D and 3D, doing material research and textile development, and then creating your designs, and then how to tie that all together into a portfolio, whether that's for a job or for college if you're applying, or any other situation that you might need it for. So I got started in fashion when I was very, very young. I was like 9 years old at summer camp. I had a friend who actually is still at college with me right now, that we kind of got into it together. This t-shirt look was one of my first ever fashion projects, where I had done like an elective, and it was like cutting up t-shirts and like painting them. I did this candy box dress that was for an elective that was like a trash-in show, and that was kind of like my first ever thing that I made. Took me a lot of time to like be okay with getting rid of it. I think it took my family moving in order for me to be like, okay, we're gonna let go of this dress, even though it's been here forever. I do still have the t-shirt though. A couple other things that I did growing up were I learned to sew at this kids academy in Westchester, New York, which is where I'm from. I learned to kind of do basic construction stuff there, and I took part in 2 different design competitions. The first one I did is on the right here, where I was given 100 juicy couture bags and challenged to make an evening wear look. And they had a fashion show at the local mall. And the second one was a very similar type of competition, but it was more focused on working for a client. So they paired us up with high school seniors who were in need of a prom dress, and we kind of worked with them to repurpose donated dresses into something that they loved. And that was really a great experience as well. If you Google me, you'll probably find this little TV clip from when I was like 10. It's quite hilarious. I recommend checking it out. Over the next bunch of years, I did a lot of projects at home. I did a lot of upcycling projects because I would just take materials that I could find. I didn't have a lot of materials or sewing machine or any of that to start. So it was all just, you know, what I could find at home. I literally had no tools. I started by duct taping myself and my sister in trash bags and using them as a dress form. So you can really start from anything. And as long as you have the creative mind, you will be able to make something happen. You know, and like there's just the drive and the persistence to want to do it. So these are some of my very early works. I did some of them based on just like draping fabric on a dress form and cutting it out and just making it work however I could. I definitely used to like cut corners a lot, and I think that I learned a lot by making mistakes and just figuring it out as I went. And some of these dresses, this middle one I have still today, that was one that I like saw in a store and was like, oh, that seems like a good one that I want to make. So I did. My best advice for getting started is honestly just to like do it. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn along the way, and that's the best way to really get to know the material that you're working with. Right before I went to college, I wanted to kind of build out my portfolio. So I did a 5 days a week for the whole summer where I was working at a studio and taking classes in pattern making, illustration, and other technical skills. But most importantly, what I learned there was how to break the rules. I got a lot of feedback on like how to expand my designs from being something that kind of molded to the shape of the body to something that broke the silhouette of the body. And I was super, super fortunate to have an amazing mentor who gave me kind of the perfect balance of soft and tough love. She was not shy about making me start over, and somehow always knew exactly what to say to like push my creative brain a little bit further. And that's when I fell in love with textiles, and has since been a very important part of my design process. And this was kind of a little snippet of the portfolio that I submitted when I applied to college back in 2016 I applied. Then from there, I started to kind of expand my thinking beyond just fashion design. I went to an installation during New York Fashion Week called 29 Rooms, and that was run by Refinery 29. And I literally waited online in Brooklyn in the New York heat for about 7 hours with a couple of my friends waiting to get into this warehouse that they had totally transformed into this immersive space. It was very participatory. There was a lot of interactive installation type of art, and it kind of drew me into fashion as a performance and an experience, and something that I wanted to make for people to have their own experience and their own story to tell, as opposed to something that they were just coming to for me. Inspired by that and kind of driven by that, I worked with the same professor at the studio that I spent time with before college. And she helped me kind of design and construct like this installation project that I did during my senior year of high school. And that included like 3 different rooms, and each one had a fashion element, and then also interactive murals and a playlist that people could add to, and just things like that that were creating this immersive environment. I hosted it like a party, and it's to this day my favorite project that I've ever done. Now I'm in college. I've been doing, since my freshman year, I've been just working on my own projects for fashion and also stuff for class. So I will use some of those as an example as I go on to creating a portfolio. But before I did that, I wanted to talk a little bit about my personal approach. There are so many different ways to approach fashion. Mine is very heavily influenced by my experience studying at Central St. Martin's in London. I'm very drawn to artistic and sculptural fashion, but the process, regardless, that I'm about to outline is applicable no matter how wearable or commercial your design style is. Everything that I want to share with you guys is just ideas and options for how to go about your process, but of course it's always ultimately up to you, and to make sure that your process and work is authentic to your style and things that you're interested in. The way that I kind of see it as fashion is a blend of art and utility. So once you learn to push the boundaries as much as you can strategically rein it back in to make it something that's sellable and make it something that can go on the rack, even though what you see on the runway can sometimes be totally outrageous. When I was applying to schools, a lot of the feedback that I got was that schools aren't necessarily looking for how well you can sew. A lot of the sewing projects that I had done were very simple and cool that I had the techniques, but they were really looking for my ability to problem solve and think outside the box and where my creative capacity lies, to kind of communicate an idea through fashion. The technical skills are definitely important, but showing your thought process and the ability to create and work through challenges is usually a lot more important. So one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got was not to design clothes, which sounded really scary at the time. I was like, what do you mean? It's fashion design. Obviously I'm designing clothes, but no. If you come at it from the perspective of designing clothes, then you're restricting yourself to things that already exist. And the goal is to kind of create something new and create something personal and something unique. So without further ado, this is my creative pipeline. I recommend doing all of this in a sketchbook, not to try to organize it. A lot of people are afraid of an empty sketchbook because they want it to look perfect, but the process goes a lot better when it's a mess. So just bite the bullet. I often will just like spill some ink on the first page and like totally mess it up so that I already have from the get-go made it messy and there's no going back from there. I try to always like skip or try to always stay on the page that I'm on. I make it a chronological process. I don't skip pages or leave room for anything because then it just ends up feeling like I'm curating it and then I get frustrated if things don't work out. So whatever, you can always use like removable adhesives like tape or instead of glue, so you can move around original materials and sketches to your final portfolio when you're done. But I personally think it's really important to have that sketchbook to lay out all your ideas and get the content out, and then you can do the curating later on. The first thing that I always try to do is pick a concept, which would be to find something that's really meaningful to me, but not to put too much pressure on it. I think that it's great to kind of have an idea that feels exciting to you and feels visually appealing to you or feels like something that you want to learn about or explore, but it can evolve over time. If you're totally stuck on that, it's always good to start with something like nature or an art piece that you really admire. And that is kind of a good starting point for any collection. The first element to show in a portfolio is a mood board. And I think that can be translated across any medium, whether you're a fashion designer, visual artist, any type of production designer, anything. It's great to have kind of a sample of what your feeling of the collection or the design wants to look like. So you don't have to pick images that look visually cohesive. The meaning is more important. I kind of went a little bit ahead on my slides, but you can edit them to match your brand style. These are examples of things that a mood board should not be. And starting with that would be, in my opinion, and a lot of people that I've kind of had experiences with, is to really try to avoid Pinterest. Pinterest is an obvious first place for people to go and start mood boarding, but a lot of the images that you see on there are specifically made to be visually interesting. A lot of them are very recognizable, and they're more based on the visual of the actual photo rather than the meaning behind them. I think that it's great to have trend images and things like that, but starting with Pinterest kind of limits you to just a visual aesthetic rather than the meaning behind it. Another thing to avoid would be other fashion looks. These are really great to have as trend inspiration, but usually when you want to design your own collection, and what makes a really strong portfolio would be having a design and a collection that comes from something that's totally unique and that doesn't come from any other inspiration of seeing garments that you've already seen before. And I'll talk a little bit more about a trend board later on. Things that a mood board should definitely include would be things that are your personal images. They can be images that you've taken, images that you've modified, but mostly it has to be stuff that like carries a specific or relevant meaning. It's great to know where your images come from and why you chose them, and not just the image looks pretty, but what's in the image and where it came from, whether that's like an art piece or, you know, here I use some like x-rays of a sculptural piece, and I could tell you, you know, exactly why I picked those images and what they mean and how they're relevant to my concept. They can include, you know, they can be in lots of different formats. It's great to use primary sources, and you can modify them to kind of fit your visual aesthetic, like I was saying. On the right here, I have the collection mood board for my capstone right now. That one I did as a Photoshop collage where I layered it, and it's very digital and it's a 2D piece. And then the one on the left is more tangible. I used some material swatches. I had some sketches. I had writing, you know, and just like other elements that I brought in to kind of create the feeling of what I was going for in my collection, even though they are kind of separate. You can kind of see how they all will tie together. And then the last thing that you want to add to a mood board is you make sure you title it. Making, like, if you have a title for the collection, that can come later, but it's really important to kind of package it together with a title as well. Once I've designed my mood board and I've kind of created these images that go together, they have to do with the collection. These images that I have over here were not these colors originally. I modified them and I edited them and all that. I go on to 3D sketching. So I will pull some shapes and feeling from the mood board and create it in paper. I'll use either a mini dress form or something that I can just find to create like a sculpture, and use those shapes and just see how I can push them. 3D sketching is great just because I'm trying to come up with silhouettes and ideas that maybe I wouldn't if I was just drawing. And it's good to start by you know, not really thinking about like what clothes am I going to design, but thinking about just like creating a silhouette and a shape. The next thing that I would do so I'm not trying to make clothes with these. I'm mostly just trying to create a vibe and a shape, and just kind of creating some similar elements that I can tie throughout the rest of the collection. The next thing I would do would be print them out. And then I start doing 2D sketching. So I'm printing them out, cutting them up, collaging them onto croquis, either things that I have drawn myself or printed from the internet. Totally doesn't matter. This is kind of the development of your idea, where I can flip things around and I can layer them on top of each other, and I can draw over them so that I'm kind of coming up with ideas, you know, that I may not have if I was just looking at my mood board and gonna just sit and sketch it out. It definitely pushes me away from designing clothes, and that's kind of almost the last step that I consider in this whole process. I go back and forth with lots of different materials. I'll use tracing paper. I'll lay them over the 2D sketches so that I can kind of bring some garment details out of there. Like here, I could see that this might be, you know, the lapel of a jacket, or like this might be a sleeve in some way. And I can kind of consider how those shapes are going to translate into garment shapes, just on a very basic level to start. And using the tracing paper can kind of help refine that process. Is that where I wanted to? I'm not ready for that yet. This can also be a good spot to look back to your aspirational or trend images, the images of other fashion designers that you really admire, just to get your mind opened up to like different silhouettes and ideas that you could apply and adapt and translate into your own work. Like I said, I definitely go back and forth between 2D and 3D, because sometimes you come up with things working in 3D that you wouldn't have thought to draw, and vice versa. When you make your sketches into 3D again, you're going to see that some things aren't going to work and some things look different than you expect them to. And that is part of the process. The whole thing, something that I think is really important about my fashion designing process is that it's very fluid. I never lock myself into colors, materials, or any specific silhouettes and details, because it's important to be able to let go of things and start over, which is always why it's also good to have a side project, so that you're kind of getting all of your ideas out and then deciding which ones are going to be the ones that are the good ones to keep. After that, I go into material research. So once I've done my sketches, I've kind of got a little bit of a sense of the vibe, maybe what the collection is going to look like, creating a variety of silhouettes with different lengths and collection that looks cohesive with similar elements, but has a lot of variety within it. I will usually go back to the mood board. I will pull colors or elements that are important to capture. Maybe it feels like shiny or foggy or heavily textured. And those are important things to look for when you're going into fabrics. It's always good to like feel fabrics in person. So going to local fabric store is a great option, or ordering swatches online. And either way, just getting fabrics that are in similar colors to your mood board or what you're going at. And then messing around with them to make them into something that's your own. That can either come out either in a 2D print form or a 3D textile manipulation, like I did these little felted eyes here. I feel like, okay, I know I'm like talking a lot. I'm like really throwing a lot out here, but I'll like do a little recap, but I'll take a pause. If anybody has any like questions about each part of the process, feel free to use the like raise hand feature. So that you guys like will pop up. Yeah. I don't think I can see any of your name. Okay, is that Danielle that just raised your hand? Go for it.
Yeah, I had a question. Why do you do the 3D before the 2D? Because it seems like doing 2D before 3D would make more sense. So I was kind of curious about like how the 3D kind of leads more into the 2D and rather the other way around.
I usually start with the 3D just because I feel like it frees me of the restriction of designing clothing. When I have these like tangible shapes and I'm creating these physical silhouettes on a body, I am kind of limited by the material, and sometimes material won't do a certain thing. If you can draw, you can just do whatever, but it's kind of giving me a little bit of structure and a little bit more, restriction on like what can material actually do. And then when I apply that to my 2D sketches, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, so like I kind of know that if I fold this shape in this way, that's what it'll look like. And then it's easier just for me to translate that way. Yeah, Sam.
Oh. Yeah, just a quick question about even the steps that you've outlined before with mood boards, 3D sketching, 2D sketching, or the ones that we're getting to soon. Out of all those steps in your process, what do you think is the step that you are trying to work hard at getting better at the most? Or is it everything? Or is there one that you're like, oh, I wish I'm trying to work right now on doing better 2D sketches or 3D? What do you think? Where are you finding your most improvement to try and be?
That's a really good question. I feel like, well, I kind of see the process as a very like those balls that you like drop and they hit each other and everything affects each other and like all parts of the process change at the same time. I find myself getting stuck a lot of the time in designing dresses. I love designing dresses. I love wearing dresses. I love making dresses, but it's can get repetitive without the variety. So I really struggle a lot of the times to break out of designing a dress. A lot of the things that I end up coming up with in my silhouettes are like, okay, well, that's just another dress, but it just looks like a blob this time. Or like, that's just another dress, but it has this extra detail. So kind of like breaking free of like restrictions of a jacket, a pair of shorts, a dress, things like that. Even when I'm translating from my sketches, like a lot of these things ended up being dresses. I'm getting to like the collection that I designed with these, but I think I would have gone back and changed a little bit of, I would have made something into a jacket, or I would have made something into a sleeve instead of a skirt or a dress. Cool. Anyone else, or shall I continue?
There's a question in the chat from
Kate. Oh, there's a question in the chat. I don't think I can see the chat. Could someone read it?
It says, Kayla asked, what do you enjoy the most about the design process?
Oh, another good one. This is a perfect slide. I love textiles. I love experimenting with materials. I like making materials that are my own. I think it's elevates a collection so much more to have materials that's your original materials that no one else has. Texture is something that I work with a lot. Circles are something that I work with a lot. I've almost never designed something where somebody hasn't said, that looks like a squid. And I just embrace that. So yeah, I think the textiles are the most interesting thing to me because, you know, you can have a really interesting design, but if you have a really interesting design and a really cool fabric, I feel like that's like a whole other level. So I do spend a lot of time on that.
That's dope. Joseph Cabello has one. Maybe we could say this to the end, but how does your art affect other things you do in life? That's
a really good one. Let's come back to that at the end.
Cool. All right, I'll save it.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So I sorry I didn't stop for questions in between those. I'm like a little overwhelmed and trying to get everything out. Anyway, so from the material research and from kind of all of the sketches that I've done, 2D and 3D, the photographs, I like look through my sketchbook and I'm thinking about colors and I'm thinking about materials and I'm thinking about the common threads that I want to tie from one to the next. Then I just do like a whole lot of like designs where I'm thinking a lot about, you know, maybe it's not like a jacket where it looks like a basic jacket with specific details, but it's something that I can create this silhouette, you know, out of material and how's it actually going to wrap around the body. And that's when I start to think about clothing from that aspect. You know, this here could be a pant leg, maybe that like gets attached to something, but I kind of know that using the paper experiment, I can find a material that has a similar type of structure and create this texture on top of it. This here was, you know, like a jacket cuff with this like long sleeve or long, you know, dress part of it, and just kind of creating things that feel a little bit more like garments. And that is a great way to kind of get started with the designs for a final collection. This was the final 5 that I selected for this one. And I'm actually going to stop sharing for just a second and head to my website because that's where I have my final collection on there. That's not what I wanted. Can you guys see my website? Yeah, okay. Cool. So here we go. Why isn't it working? Okay, so this is kind of what I'm talking about when I mean like kind of tying it all together. So this is the collection that I have based on the whole process that I just described. I've got my sketchbook pages, my mood boards that I tried to kind of consolidate into these 2 pages. I've got my 3D experiments. I have my design sketch process. And then this was just like all of the photographs of everything that was inspirational, just like laid out on my bed. And then I made this final look from it. So this was all done in muslin. I did this during my summer at Central St. Martin's and I hand tacked every single one of these ruffles. It took forever, but this was supposed to be this coat. So even though it doesn't look, you know, exactly like that, and even though the fabric didn't have the like big swooping things that I had, I kind of created a 3D version of something that I had drawn 2D that I would then probably go back at some point and like edit the sketch to be a little bit more reflective of what it actually turned out as in 3D. The sleeves kind of had, it's like, this is a bad picture, but like the sleeves kind of had this like looping ruffle that went down it. So I made sure to like keep the integrity of the design. But again, like every time you're gonna make something in 3D, it's not gonna look like what you expect it to. Mistakes are gonna happen. And the best thing that you can do for yourself is just embrace those mistakes and keep going. So how do you make it into a portfolio? Oh, what was I here? I have some more notes. So yeah, mood board, material, sketches, and photographs, and everything you've accumulated, and then start designing the process from the silhouettes and the shapes. A collection can be anywhere from like 3 to 5 to 50 looks. So don't feel like if you're making a portfolio, you have to like do the most. I think it's a lot more important to get really in depth on what you're working on and show your thought process and show how you got from one step to the next, rather than showing like, I've sewn, you know, 30 dresses that all have a similar cut, or you know what I mean? Showing your thought process is really, really important for that. Make it into a portfolio. So there's lots of different ways to present a portfolio. I kind of consider my whole website my portfolio in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's good to have kind of tangible or more consolidated versions if you're sending them to colleges or jobs or anything. I prefer portfolio to be physical. I think it's cool to have like tangible swatches of material and actual sketches that are original sketches in what you're showing somebody. But if it's online, then it's great to have scans of that or digitally laid out pages, whatever you feel like fits for you. So it's usually kind of like 10 pages, 10 slides or something like that. This would be a good place to kind of take all of the things that you taped into your sketchbook and then consolidate it, keeping the original sketches and materials, but kind of deciding which sketches and which elements provide the most cohesive experience for somebody looking at your portfolio. So for example, I have a lot of silhouette development that I did for my capstone, but a lot of them didn't end up actually translating into the final collection. So when I kind of present my final portfolio, I won't necessarily include ones that you can't trace all the way to the final design. These ones were ones that I originally used. These ones over here, I probably kind of got rid of somewhere along the process. So I probably wouldn't include that page, for example, just because it's not necessarily like exactly related to how the collection ended up going, but it is important that they do exist because that was part of the process. I would separate a portfolio by projects. You can kind of have extended versions online, like I said, but when you're applying for a job or school, it's good to like keep it legible, and it's always really tempting to fit everything in, but it's good to be selective. So the way that I would kind of lay it out would be to have your mood board, maybe a little collection statement of like, this is what this collection is about. And then show, you know, some of your materials, your 2D and 3D sketches, which don't have to be super curated. They can be, you know, things that you've written notes on so that people can see how you draw from one to the next. And then when you get to your actual design page, that's when you can kind of show off, you know, your beautiful page layout skills and putting it in context to make it look super clean and professional. So for example, that would be kind of like this page, or you know, something like this where you have the title of the collection and then the illustrations, just a way to kind of showcase the final works, and it's clear that this is a final look and that you don't have like the rest of the process, you know, this is a result, is important to show. Other things that are great to include are if you do sew or if you do any material experiments, high quality photographs of those, any technical skills that you want to show off. Maybe you're really good at doing baby hems, or, you know, any specific like dart technique or things like that. Like that's really great to show. And then just like making little sewing samples and stuff like that. But again, if you're applying to college for fashion design, it's always, you know, that's what you're going to learn in school. So that's not necessarily the priority for what they're looking for. Other things can be like fashion figure drawings. You can start by just like tracing croquis from online, or just like practice. I mean, it takes, when I first started, I like remember the first day that I went in and I think I drew like 100 croquis in a row. And each time, you know, my teacher was sitting there being like, your arms look like noodles. But just like kind of making edits to each one and kind of figuring out like the groove until I figured out like how to do it. And then kind of translating it into my style. You know, everything just takes time and practice and all of that. Portfolio can feel like a really massive task. It is, but it's a great process. And I think it's like just the most important thing is like to be happy while you're working on it, and to be working on stuff that is important and relevant to you. So yeah, the last thing I kind of want to cover is my capstone collection. This is something that I'm working on right now. I've been working on it since the beginning of the school year, and the whole concept is built around dreams. So if you want to head to my website and check it out, this capstone section of the website kind of has all of my process so far. And it is coming out in May, which is very exciting. And if you're interested in supporting my work now I am actually launching my first ever collection of branded merchandise today, right after this workshop. So that will be on my Instagram. And if you're on my emailing list and all of that, I'm really excited to send that email out. That's it. I will, answer as many questions as you guys have. It would be absolutely impossible to cover everything in like just a short workshop, but please feel free to use the Discord channel to share your work, to ask questions. I know that there's going to be so many exciting things coming up with lots of other creatives who are going to give some workshops. And no matter what your medium is, I think that there will be applicable parts of all of them to inform your work in your medium. And yeah, I'm a big believer that, every art form is multimedia in some capacity, and there's always stuff to learn from other creatives. So I am more than happy to be a resource for all of you on Discord, on Instagram, any of these platforms. And I'm so excited to see all of your work over the next 10 weeks and kind of hear about everyone's plans and where you're going with everything. So that's my spiel.
Man,
thank you.
Emma, that was amazing, yo. The details, that's so fire. I love seeing that stuff. I know you showed me it yesterday, but that joint was so nice, yo, to see just the process and how you develop your ideas, and to be so young, like to be a Gen Z and to be like making stuff at the level that you're doing it, and the intricacy and details is just fire, yo. So thanks for doing that. I would love to open it up for some questions if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question myself.
Yes.
All right. I wrote it down. So I was like, I think what I noticed and I loved about what you do and how you create, because it applies to everyone, not just like somebody who works in fashion or design. To me, something that I tend to not do as much is document my process. And I think something that you do extremely well is document your process. Like, why do you think it's important to, as a creator, whether video, photo, whatever, to document your process?
I mean, for everything. I used to be not that good at documenting my process. And then I kind of started learning that anybody can make a really beautiful collection. Like anybody can like design and illustrate, if you spend enough time, anybody can design and illustrate a really beautiful collection. And what's the most important is like why you did it. I think that like, if you can't like back up your work and you can't be like, oh, like I think it distinguishes a good designer from a great one to be, I'm saying this, I'm literally a child, but
No, that's dope.
But I think it's like so important to be able to back up why you made decisions that you did and how you got there. Because that's like the designing, you can draw, you can like make clothes,
yeah,
like design. And I think the designing is the process and is showing that you have the capacity to like have a reason behind what you're doing, and why you do it and why you love it and why it matters.
Yeah. I think it's so dope when you say that, because like I'm a little bit older, close to my 30s, but I've been doing creative work for about 7 years now, 6 years, 7 years now. And I just think if I would have documented, I have it all just on random drives, but if I would have just documented it a little bit better, I think it would help me to not be so hard on myself and to see the progress that I've made. So I think that's super dope. I would love to open it up for a few more questions, if that's cool. We get a few more minutes. Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself, ask some questions. I know you got to have questions because that joint was crazy.
I was just hoping that it wouldn't be like too much detail, that it would be overwhelming.
No, not at all.
By myself sometimes, so
feel free to
kind of like a longer process of like we can be in contact and things come up at any point. Yeah. But still happy to hang out and answer some now. Hey, George.
Can you hear me?
Who's that?
Gerald.
Go for it.
I'll see you too, Theo. We'll get you next.
First and foremost, I want to thank you for spending your time with us and sharing your knowledge. I really do appreciate that. But my overall question is that you said that like your overall message, like what are you trying to share through your current collection, like your viewers and anybody, like what's the overall message that you want them to take away from your collection?
Well, that's a good question. So my collection's about dreams. I have been always super interested in just understanding like how the human mind works. I kind of always said that if I didn't study fashion, I probably would have studied psychology just because I think relationships between people are so interesting. And my goal has always just been to empower people to just be their truest selves. That's always been something that's been important to me, is like just feeling very expressive and unafraid to put myself out there. I mean, sometimes that's really scary. I wore monochrome orange the other day, and that felt like a really bold decision, but all of my friends, some of whom are in here, strongly encouraged me to do it. So yeah, I just like want to see a world full of color and people expressing themselves unapologetically, and just going crazy, because what do we have to lose? Judgment is stupid.
I love it. That's dope. I think we had another one. Thea, is it Thea? Sorry, I'm in New York. It's crazy out here.
So you're clearly someone who is overflowing with ideas and kind of is just constantly coming up with things and creating things. So how do you choose out of all that what you feel like deserves to be a part of the portfolio, and what do you include, what do you leave out?
Oh man, I have a really hard time. I'm very much like, I want to do everything. I'm a maximalist in every way. I have a really hard time narrowing things down. I have a really hard time cutting things out and choosing. I would say that my stuff, I usually probably do put in more than I should. That's something that I'm working on. But I would say like taking a step back and just looking at it from an objective perspective. I mean, it's really hard when you're so close to the work to do that, but being able to just like take a step back and see like, okay, like I can understand that like this is not necessarily relevant, or this doesn't really show the process as much as something else does, or anything like that. Taking breaks is really important. I literally live, breathe, sleep, and eat my collection. Sleep on a quite literal level. I have multiple dreams about it if I don't finish something to the level that I want it to be finished. And so taking breaks is really important to kind of gain a fresh perspective. And also like not being too self-critical. I think it's really easy for people to critique their own work really harshly. But a lot of the stuff that we critique of ourselves is like the best stuff that we put out. And I think it's really important to like not take it too seriously and be like, okay, you know what, like maybe this is ugly, but if it's ugly, that's just what it's going to be. You know, every once a week, I kind of have a moment where I'm like, my collection is doomed for disaster. And then I'm like, well, you know, I'm having a good time making it. So if it's ugly, that's okay. I'll make another one. Yeah, and I think that's been a really important mindset for me, to be able to just like let go of when things don't turn out how I want them to, and be like, okay, just gonna do it again, and that's fine.
Man, that's amazing. I think that's the beauty of it too, is to be able to see that like to be able to fail and then keep going. That's super dope. Thank you for asking that question. I have a question from earlier, Emma, I wanted to ask you. And it said, I think Joseph asked, how does your art affect other things you do in life?
I think that in a lot of ways it affects everything. And then in other ways, I kind of forget about it entirely, which is like kind of a nice break. I feel like my design work is like me expressing my personality. So I kind of feel like the two are very intertwined. I have a lot of like, especially because a lot of my work has to do with kind of like the human experience and my connections with people, and, you know, understanding mental health and making connections and things like that. That's something that I think about on a daily basis, but it's not necessarily like, I don't necessarily go around my life and think like, oh wow, I had a really great sleepover, you know, last week, and I'm gonna make a collection about it. But sometimes I do, you know, like Taya and I had a photo shoot with some shredded cheese a couple weeks ago, and like maybe that'll turn into a collection, who knows. So yeah, I think it's like important to kind of have it be a part of my life in ways that I'm like always aware that everything can be an inspiration, but at the same time, not getting so drawn into it that I'm looking for inspiration in everything that I do.
Love it. I think Jillian had a question as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering, could you say a bit more about how you designed your brand and the logo?
Yeah. So if any of you are on my email list, I actually am going to be sending out an email kind of explaining this too in about 20 minutes when I launch my merch line. But the logo that I had previously was kind of a combination of my initials, and it was in like a square. And I'm taking a personal branding class this semester. So part of it was kind of like class assignments where we were kind of challenged to like pick branding colors, design a logo, do like hang tags and things like that to like capture the collection. And I was just looking at it and I was like, this doesn't feel like me. I would literally never use a square in my designs. All my designs are like very rounded and whimsical, and squares were just not it for me. So I wanted to come up with something that felt more organic, that felt more in line with my brand. And I kind of came up with this like looping symbol that I felt like was representative of the idea of connections. And it kind of has like an abstract eyeball in it. I've done a lot of eyeball imagery throughout my work. I'll have to add some tentacles to it in some capacity, but yeah, just something that felt like a symbol that was representative of me as a designer. I mean, I've been through like 150 different versions of my logo. I've probably redone my website like 8 or 9 times over the last 5 years. Every few months, I'll be like, hey, I now have a new branding on social media. And then 6 months later, I'll be like, hey, I have a new branding. It's always changing and it's always evolving. So that's totally okay. And, you know, as you're getting your stuff out, you know, it's better to get it out there and then change it entirely than like not get it out because you're not sure if it's set.
Amazing. I think we have time maybe for one more question and then we'll wrap up. But Emma, thank you so much. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have one more question. But Emma, thank you so much. This has been so dope. I'm just blown away. I feel like when I was that sounds so old to say, but when I was your age, I feel like taking art seriously is just something that you can't teach, and you can't like look up a YouTube tutorial, and you can't just like guess. You have to really put in the work. And I think seeing what you've done and what you continue to build and how your process is, it's super dope, inspiring to see.
Thank you. Thank you guys. I mean, this has been so great for me. I feel like I'm like in a whirlwind of like, oh my God, this is really happening. But I'm just so grateful to have you all here and to connect with everyone. And I'm just so excited to see everyone's stuff over the next bunch of weeks.
I do have one more question. I wanted to ask if it's cool. I wanted to ask your TikTok. It's pretty, you grew that pretty fast. And I feel like it's one of the things that I think it's super dope that you merge this fashion design world with it. How would you encourage someone, or like, what is your thoughts on just making content that engages in that kind of medium as well?
Yeah. Doing TikTok has been an interesting experience. It's been a little bit of a learning curve and just kind of like figuring out what works. I always have kind of looked at it as an opportunity to just like connect with people and get my story out there and drive traffic to my other places to hopefully like, I mean, my goal is that like, I want my brand to feel like a little bit like a cult, like people who just like live for the message and just like feel like they want to embody what I'm trying to say. And I felt like kind of telling stories through TikTok was a really great way to gain some visibility. And I know like a lot of you here found me on TikTok. I recognize your users when you comment on my stuff. It makes me really happy. And I think it's like, the world is kind of moving towards like media marketing in that way. So it's pretty cool to like see how that can translate for myself. I guess that would be like a whole other workshop that I could do about like why I feel like TikTok is a really great marketing tool and how it's been helpful for me. But yeah, I think like part of it is not only thinking like a designer and being a creative artist, but also knowing like how to tell your story and how to share it with the world.
Yeah,
Not that I'm an expert on any of this. Like I don't have a degree yet.
No, you definitely are some type of expert for sure. And we appreciate it. Yo, thank you so much. I want to plug your socials and your website. So can you maybe, I know it was a slide up, but I just want to make sure everyone in here goes and buys something from the collection and follows you on IG, TikTok. If you don't know Emma on TikTok, you need to follow her because she just got a light 120K on there. You know what I'm saying? So you're missing out if you don't. You better get on before she gets a mill and she doesn't recognize you no more. But yeah, follow her on her TikTok, her socials. There you go, right there. Also, we can't wait till the collection drops. I'm excited.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm like a little bit terrified, but it'll be good.
Love it.
It might be ugly and it'll be fine.
Nah, it'll be great. Thank you so much. A couple things before we get out of here. Man, we just launched a new integration on the platform. It's called the content feed. It's super amazing. Emma has her site. She's super established, amazing. But for creators who are trying to figure out where to post their work or how to get it out there, Collective has an easy way, and that's a portfolio tool that we have. So you can literally upload everything that you have or everything that you're working on or created on the portfolio tool. In Creative. If you don't have access to that, just send me an email. I'm going to put my email right here in the chat, and then go buy something from Emma, please. Let me see. I think that's it for today. Oh, Monday. Monday, I'm super excited. We have my friend, her name's Erin Eddy. She's a new author. Amazing. We've been doing these lunch and kind of like kick it with experts on Monday, and this is one of my best friends in the whole wide world. She's coming in. She has a brand called So Worth Loving. Basically how she started her clothing brand is she would literally just sketch on shirts, and it just became a movement. Thousands and thousands of people have written to her, have like experienced this different type of movement. So she wrote a book. So if you're interested in writing a book, this is definitely the conversation for you. She's amazing. And also if you struggle with like identity and imposter syndrome, this is like definitely the conversation for you to have as well. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, pretty much we're good. Thank you so much, Emma. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Just thank you guys for all of the support. It seriously means so much to me, and I am just so excited to see what you guys put out and what's coming next.
Amazing. Hey, if you have any questions or anything else for Emma, in the Discord chat, which everyone should have access to. If you don't, send me an email. We also have it on our IG at Collective. I know it's not spelled like the actual word collective, so at CLLCTVE. That was such a hard time spelling that right now, but you can see it. Follow us, and then in the channel we have a specific channel for Emma, so she would love to see your work develop. We can also, I'll be there as well. I'm not a fashion expert, but I definitely can give some different thoughts on some work and just different things in general. So we love to just create this community. This is like for us, Emma, people like Emma and people like yourself. We want to give you resources and just be a place where you can hang out and, learn stuff like this and experience different people and in different places of the world. So it's super dope.
I forgot about the challenge part of this.
Oh yeah. Drop it.
Thank you, Gerald, for reminding me. Yes, so my challenge for you guys, whether you're interested in fashion or something else, would be to create a mood board and then do a little bit of like either 2D or 3D sketching using stuff that you have in your house. No need to go all out, but try to kind of create a design inspired by something in your home or something that you, like an image or something like that, that is just like a one mood board and a couple of like kind of process sketches of how you got there. So maybe like 3 slides of like where you're starting, how you got there, and then the final result would be awesome to see. Just how you kind of diffuse, you know, what you were inspired by my process and what you feel like you want to share in your process.
That's dope. Yeah, do that. You could also, so a few ways, if you do that we can see, Emma and I and the team can see, is if you go to your collective profile, upload it. Once you upload, now we have that content feed, so it'll literally populate the page, so we'll be able to see it, and we want to share it on social media. Like, we want to share your work, what you're working on. So please upload your portfolio, because I'm so excited. I can't say nothing yet, but we're partnering with some amazing brands and amazing companies, and we're going to give opportunities and give prizes to different creators, like cash money, yo. Like, we're trying to get paid. So if you're a creator, videographer, writer, we just got so many different challenges that we're about to launch here in the next month. So populating your portfolio will let us know what you're kind of into, what you create. And then also too, we got the Discord chat, so we'll be launching it as well. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Emma. We will see you on Monday.